So we first talked about the substitution cipher. Now we're going to talk about the second type of cipher, which is the transposition cipher. The way that this works is that the order of the letters or bits is changed. So again, we have our plain text of trust no one. What we're going to do is have a key of 2134312. And then notice we have rows and columns. So we're going to put our key into the column, so 213, and then we're going to put a row key into the rows, so 4312. And then we're going to take the trust no one and we're going to place each of those characters inside of our table of columns and rows here. So in order to build our ciphertext, we are going to look at the one position in the column and the one position in the row, and that is going to become our first character, which is O. Then we are going to look at the two position in the row and the one position in the column, and that becomes N. Then we're going to look at the three position in the row and then the one position in the column, and that becomes T. And finally, the four position in the row and then the one position in the column, and that becomes R. So we are left with O and TR for the first column. We would then proceed to follow the same for the second column, and then we do the same thing for the third column until we eventually end up with our ciphertext, which is going to look like this: O and TR, NOST, space E space U. So as we are using the transposition cipher, we need to consider both how we're going to read it and how we're going to write it. And we can read it either by row or by column. So here's our first example where we're reading by row. If we take this is my super secret code and we have the key of 4251763 and we have the row key of 3241, what I'm going to do is put in this is my super secret code by row as you would normally read a book. Now when we write by row, we are going to stick with the row and then just keep moving across the column until we've exhausted that row. So for example, you'll notice right by row we have 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 7 times, and then we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 for the columns. So in order to do this, I'm going to look at row 1 and I'm going to stay on that until I've exhausted all the columns. So row 1, column 1 is C. Row 1, column 2 is T. Row 1, column 3 is E. And if you keep doing that, you end up with CTEE space DO for the first row. And then for the next row, you go up to 2 and you do the same thing and you end up with space MP space YUS and so on until you eventually end up with your complete ciphertext, as you can see here. Now, if we read by column and write by row, instead of putting the text in by row like we would normally do as we're reading a book, this time we're going to put the text in by column. So we start with the first column in our table that we built here and do this downwards and then is downwards and so on until we fill the entire thing. Write out by row is going to work the exact same, but we're going to end up with a completely different ciphertext because we are reading by column instead of reading by row. Reading by row, writing by column is identical to the first part where we're going to read by row and put the text in, as you can see. But this time we are going to stick with column 1 until we've exhausted all the rows in that. So we go 1 1 in the column, which is C, and then 1 2 in the column, which is space, and then 1 3 in the column, which is S, and then 1 4 in the column, which is S. And then we move on to the second column, which would then be T, M, H, R, and so on until we've gone through all 7 columns. If we're reading in by column and writing out by column, it's just a combination of everything that we taught you. This time we're going to put the text inside by column, and then we are going to stick with that one column until we've exhausted all the possibilities. So we'll do 1 1, which is R, and then 1 2, which is P, and then 1 3, which is U, and then 1 4, which is E, and so on until we've gone through all 7 columns. So now I want you to try this on your own. So using the key 154232134, transpose the plain text, ciphertext, by reading in by row and then writing out by column. So pause this video and try this on your own, and then come back to check your answer. All right, welcome back. So here we have the key that I've put across the columns 15423, and then I put the row 2134, and then I'm going to read in by row. So I'm just going to put try transposing this read in by row, and then we're going to write out by column. So we're going to do 1 1, which is R, and then 1 2, which is capital T, and then 1 3, which is O, and then 1 4, which is space. And we're going to do that for all 5 columns until we eventually get our final message. So what would be the ciphertext if we were writing out by row? Pause this video and try to do this one on your own. All right, welcome back. So now if we are writing out by row, this time we would stick with the row 1 until we've exhausted all the columns. So 1, 1 would be R, 1, 2 would be S, 1, 3 would be P, 1, 4 would be N, 1, 5 would be A. And so we end up with a completely different message just because we're writing it out by row instead of writing out by column. Thanks for watching my video. Feel free to click the links here to watch the next video of the playlist, continue to the next playlist, or subscribe.